I guess my final takeaway is please respect me after this. I know it's too much. You probably know what Japanese manga is, as the comics have been wildly popular in the last couple of decades. Shoujo is a subgenre that is marketed towards girls and teenagers, as shonen is for young guys. Shoujo is characterized by some very particular artistic tropes and styles, but, like all artistic forms, is wildly variant. Japan experienced a large boom of the production of girls' comics in the 1970s. Morimaru's novel was the first homoerotic novel written by a woman, and features many of the characteristics that are prevalent in pretty boy comics of the 1970s. The magazine June was first published in 1978, specifically featured this kind of manga. Amateur mangaka got their start in June, and until the mid-80s, it was the only medium beyond amateur productions where one could publish these sorts of stories. They largely flourished in the 1980s doujinshi. Doujinshi are self-published fan comics. This is seen as comparable to fan fiction and fan work productions internationally. Fujoshi was also spawned at this time, and it has two meanings. The first one, written with this kanji, means women folk, and then the second one means rotten girls. So the question is, why boys love? Any analysis of the Fujoshi community and boys love is skewed because 1. Sexuality is fluid, identities are fluid, and 2. Japanese mangaka are particularly private and work under a number of pseudonyms and publishers and hardly ever give interviews. I personally think many yaoi mangaka are queer, but keep in mind that Fujoshi are specifically heterosexual women writing about gay men. One answer suggests that the utilization of two members of a societally dominant demographic in a story eliminates the usual stifling power dynamic of heterosexual relationships. Although not seen as the sole purpose, this theory is generally accepted as a contributing factor to why women read boys love. A second theory suggests that BL allows women to experience ideal romance through self-insertion, overcoming their weaker feminine traits by taking on a male persona. This theory implies that women do not have agency in a relationship, and that BL consumption is a type of compensation. These early manga in the 70s featured pretty boy protagonists, almost entirely set in Western affluent environments, and often ended in tragedy. This genre of yaoi is also distinct from shonen ai, as yaoi often portrays openly romantic or sexual feelings or relationships between male characters. Shonen ai is more open-ended, interpretive, and might emphasize the boys' relationships, but never openly discusses any of their romantic or sexual feelings. In the Fujoshi community, women are empowered to dream up whatever stories they wish, with little criticism from outside powers. Beyond female empowerment, Fujoshi exploration of gender ideals and role is greatly emblematic of feminist ideals, particularly in BL's emphatic disavowal of established gender norms. This, of course, is the ideal as far as feminism in Fujoshi goes. Even though there are love stories between men, the characters almost always assume the gender roles typically assigned to men and women in heterosexual relationships. This is especially prevalent in the community's seme-uke terminology, which is very rarely unused. The Fujoshi community is largely characterized as uncaring that this depiction is inaccurate to same-gender couples. Boys love is still a business, and BL depiction of men is one that is easily understood, easily marketable, and not one that is realistic. While being a spear of female autonomy and power, boys love is not an exclusively female narrative space. The term fudanshi was coined by Budore Kusuko, a male fan of BL. In 2002 on 2 Channel, another male fan and critic, Yoshimoto Taimatsu, published Fudanshi ni Kikugan, initial attempt to analyze heterosexual male readings of BL to make these readers visible for the first time. These men said that the female writers of boys love were themselves homophobic and that the genre plunders images of gay men. The debate shows a basic opposition between yaoi genre and gay men. Gay mangaka Takame Gengoro asks, what puts less pressure on men, coming out as gay or coming out as a fudanshi who loves BL? Perhaps, he says, self-identifying as a fudanshi creates less pressure. It would be problematic if the deep-rooted homophobia attached to gay sexuality could be easily evaded or covered up by the word fudanshi. Fudanshi in this way can be understood as a double-edged term. It renders gay sexuality invisible and reflects discriminatory attitudes. It also provides a queer space in which attitudes towards gender can be challenged. A man harshly criticized the yaoi genre on the basis of its limited and stereotypical images of the supposedly gay characters. Sato, in Queer Studies of 1996, insisted that yaoi representations of gay men lead to commodification and also stylization of gay men's sexualities in a way that becomes heterosexist. Mizuguchi argues that yaoi does not represent any person's reality, but rather is a battlefield in which straight, lesbian, and other women's desires and political stakes clash, and representations are born. She argues that yaoi has unprecedented potential to function as a lesbian and feminist genre. In the face of all these criticisms, yaoi is getting better. Increasing numbers of characters who self-identify either as gay or bisexual have started to appear in manga. The grammar of BL manga to openly dismiss canonically gay characters has also changed over the last decade. As a reader, I can acknowledge these things for myself. I don't expect to see or read heterosexist portrayals. Fewer men deny sexual attraction for men in the comics. Critics now also acknowledge that fewer and fewer characters in BL make explicit homophobic remarks. Many manga feature LGBTQ characters and I believe are written by LGBTQ mangaka. Yaoi has been something that for me was very personally revelatory. I was reading it as a young teen without the idea that it was written by a straight woman for a straight woman. I only saw queer characters and participated in a similarly queer community that was reading these manga. It was really helpful for me as a young queer kid reading these stories. I'll be posting a second video to follow up featuring some of my recommendations and answering any questions that anyone has. Special thanks to my project partners at Kanzai who helped me put together this presentation last year. Thank you so much. Bye.